Check, check, check. Everybody's here. Okay. Where's my eraser? Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Michael Markowsky and I'm going to be making a painting with you today. If you just noticed, I wrote number 98 there and I skipped. Some people are like, what, maybe 97, 98? That's because I filmed a episode last night in the middle of the night and uploaded it to YouTube. There was, I think, one or two people who were watching in real time. Not surprising because I didn't announce it. I didn't make any posts anywhere. I just did it. And that episode was me finishing off this painting by Hilma af Klint. So we made this one during the previous class, and we began this one, and I was kind of thinking, oh yeah, maybe I'll work on it some more, maybe. And then I thought, you know what, I gotta finish it. I find it very hard to leave paintings unfinished, so maybe I'll just put these up here just so you can kind of see this painting. So there is another video, as I said, that's up there now on the YouTube channel where you see me working on this painting a little bit more, adding, talking a little bit about how I did this white wash over top of the purple that we had there and bring it to a resolution. The other thing that I did in that video is I really kind of geeked out talking about what happened when we put this red over top of these colored washes. So you remember we began with some different colors on the background that we layered very lightly, and then I put this red over top, and it changed those colors. It changed quite dramatically, and we can see, you know, that some are darker than others, and the color has also been altered in some way. I'm not going to go into it right now because I spent 20 minutes going on and really just geeking out on it. So if you're interested, you can watch those episodes and you can use it to finish the second Hilma af Klint painting that we began. Okay, so let's get to work on our next painting for today. So the painting that we're going to work on today is by Suzanne Valadon, and it's specifically, maybe actually let me share my screen here. Pardon this here, just take me un momente to get this organized here. So I'll just, and I put a link in the description below to this image, or to this page that I'm looking at right now. So if you want to go and after the class and use this painting, if you want to continue working on it, this is the painting that we're going to work on today. But we're only going to work on a small section of this painting. So we're just going to focus in on, oh, I guess, I have another version of this. Well, you know, let me see, can I drag that? Nope. Okay. So let me just pull out the real painting here. Doom dee doom dee doom dooby doo doom. Okay, here. Computer is being cranky and slow. There we are. Okay. So I'm just going to drag this into focus. And we are going to, whoa, not that close. We are going to make a painting that is much more like this here. Come on. So because just the full painting itself has a lot of elements. There's flowers and fabric and background. And, you know, if I go back to the original here, there's a lot going on. And there's just not enough time to really do a painting like this in an hour or a couple of hours, depending on how quickly I move and how much I talk, right? So we're going to focus in on a detail of the painting. And, you know, I think it's just maybe important to know that that's something that you can do, right? If you like a part of any painting, you can just make a painting of that part of a painting like we're going to do today. You don't have to do the entire thing if that is going to take you too long, or it's too much of a challenge, or, you know, there's parts of the painting you don't like, or parts of the painting that you really do like. Well, let's focus in on that and use it as an excuse to make a painting. Okay, so here's my palette. This is, again, this is my wet palette from last night, so I haven't cleaned any of the paint off. Oh, and I just see that a couple of these tabs broke off, so that's frustrating. So I'll have to glue those on, maybe during this or afterwards. But so this is our palette. Let's get our paints out. I'll just, I see there's a bunch of comments in the chat already. Gail says, Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Thank you for reminding me of Thanksgiving. So here in Canada, we celebrate Thanksgiving on Monday. In just a couple of days from now, or well, I guess 4 days from now, but traditionally we have a long weekend, so a lot of people may even take today off or Friday off, and it's one of the busier travel days of the year for Canadians. So, oh my goodness, why is that? Just like Thanksgiving is a really big holiday in the United States. Now, just a little quick distinction. Canadian Thanksgiving precedes American Thanksgiving, not only in the calendar, but historically. Canadians have been celebrating Thanksgiving for, I don't know all the details, but, and the history of Thanksgiving has a different history than American Thanksgiving, but I don't know all of the details, so I'm not even going to go into it because I'll just be making up some random stuff. If you know the difference between Canadian and American Thanksgiving and the histories, I would be very interested in reading it in the chat. Because, and I'm saying all that because what's great about doing this teaching online is we have people from all over the world here. And when you guys have shared where you are, I see people, a lot of people from Canada, but I can even see in the statistics later on after the show that there's lots of people in the United States, probably 30% of the audience is in the States. We have people in Australia, a bunch of people in Europe, India, and China. So, I mean, that's why I don't take it for granted that when we say Happy Thanksgiving, that everybody's like, oh yeah, of course, yeah, Happy Thanksgiving. There's a bunch of people who are like, what on earth are we talking about? Madeline says, I have too much homework to paint along today, but I figure I could still have this playing in the background as I work. That's cool. I was thinking about that, you know, originally I'm like, why would somebody watch me paint and not actually paint along with me? And then I realized I do the same thing all the time. I often put YouTube on and I just have it, you know, and somebody's talking around in the background. So maybe this is, maybe you're doing the same thing with my videos. So, and maybe slightly absorbing a little bit in the background. Okay, enough chatter, Michael. Let's get to this painting. So, let me set up another screen here where we can see this painting and my overhead view here simultaneously. Okay, so we're going to work on this image. And to get started, we're going to draw it out. So, and because we're going to cover this painting with a lot of paint, we're not going to be too worried about doing a lot of detail in this image. Right, here's my... I'm trying to draw this equally, but look, I mean, it's not perfect. They're not straight. What I'm really just trying to get at is where's the middle of this picture, and it's probably closer to there than there. And that's just because for me, I want any kind of guidelines that are going to help simplify this whole process. So, again, since this is a painting that we're going to kind of crop a whole bunch out of it, right? Then we in some ways it's a little bit difficult, but it's also in many ways gives us a lot of freedom for how we're going to approach this. So this will be a little bit of a drawing demonstration as well. So let's say where do we want to put this cat in the picture? Now, probably many of you would think, okay, let's put it right in the middle, in which case the head might be right here. That would be fine, except then we just have this whole, the behind the cat is going to be a little bit of dead space, and we want to try to, wherever the front of a person's face, or in this instance a cat or an animal's face is, there's still this kind of active space here. And one of the techniques that artists have used for hundreds and hundreds of years is, maybe I should even use a colored pencil here. Is a technique called the golden ratio or the golden mean. And really, and you probably don't want to use this. I'm just going to demonstrate this. You probably don't want to draw it on there. But is to divide if the canvas was actually divided into thirds, 3 columns, right, and then divided again into 3s, we have these places where the painting, these areas are traditionally in painting is where you kind of want to put some kind of element of focus, let me see, maybe as we go on, I'll talk about the rule of thirds or the golden mean, but essentially it's about decentering the composition a little bit. So instead of putting the cat's head right here, I'm going to put the cat's head right here. Right, so if this is the middle of my picture, the cat's head is going to go right here. Okay, so we'll draw the features of the cat here in a moment. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the shape of the body. And this is going to be a little bit tricky because, you know, we've got these legs and everything, and where is the shape of the body? So we can see this part is there, right? This part of the body's there. So let's just continue it as a kind of a circle, or an oval, sorry. Okay. So we've got the kind of the back part of this cat. We've got the head of the cat. And then we've got the kind of the front part of the cat, kind of where this is a little bit of a larger cat, right? So we've got this part here, and then we've got one leg here, and then we've got this other leg here, and this leg here, which is being covered by the tail a bit. And then here's this tail kind of wrapping around. Okay. Again, these are, right now, you can see that I already see some problems. Maybe this leg needs to be longer. I'm not worried about getting all those details perfect right now. I just want to see if I can fit this cat into the picture here. So here's its ears. Let's say this down here would be the nose. Right, that little triangle. And then from up here, we can draw these eyes. Is there anything else that I want to do while we're right here? I think I'm okay with this so far. Again, you can see I haven't drawn stripes. I haven't done a lot of details on here. And obviously I'm going to omit some of the stuff in the sides, in the background, all of this costumey fabric I'm going to take out just so I can really dial in on the cat. Okay, so this is what you want your drawing to look like at this stage of the process here. So maybe I'm going to go back. Oh, I need to create another one of these here. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to do another underpainting over top of this, just like we did with the Hilma af Klint paintings, to kind of get to help make this painting go a little bit faster when we paint it. Because one of the things that we learned when we did that underpainting is basically we cover all of the white right off the bat. And that saves us time, because later on when we're painting over it again, then we're not so worried about little bits of white showing through, which, you know, if we look at this Matisse painting, right, there's all this little bits of white kind of showing through. And this, again, this is a feature of Matisse's practice and his artwork, that he liked these little areas of kind of roughness. I think partly, you know, that's, again, if we're thinking about like why an artist would do this, particularly 100 years ago, is you have to just think of the context for why, what kind of art was being made at that time. And Matisse was, you know, part of a generation of artists that were, you know, really challenging the entire way that painting had been done and approached, and what kinds of things could be in a painting. And these little things were about as radical as you could possibly imagine, right? Like this kind of stuff is like when Dylan plugged his guitar in, right? And people lost their minds in Royal Albert Hall in London, right? And somebody screams Judas out, right? Because they were just like so shocked, like why would somebody invert everything we've known before and not paint right up to here? Because that's just a totally different, like what we're going to do is we're going to paint this maybe in a little bit more traditional way than this was painted, I guess is what I'm saying. So that act of Matisse to leave bits of white was a provocative gesture. It doesn't seem like that now. You're like, really? People got upset about this? People, you know, picketed and yelled, and there were, you know, nasty articles in the newspaper about it. Like, man, what a different world. If that's what upset people and had headline news 100 years ago. Anyway, so we're going to apply a background wash to this painting. So the question then becomes, what wash should we put down here? And so the previous episode, what we did is we put down a few different colors as options for that background. And I think that's what I want to do again today is, so just like we did this painting and we had a couple of different, we had 4 colors in the background, and then that allows us to see the differences, right? I think I want to do the same thing with this new painting today, and so that we can make a painting that will still look like a good painting, but it's also going to almost, we can refer to it later on and say like, oh, okay, this is what this did, this is what this one. So we can kind of combine a bunch of things all together at once. So let's get on to the train and leave the station, and let's do this. Okay, so which color should we put down? Well, in the previous 2, I should maybe just keep these here because I keep referring to them. In the previous ones, we had, if I bring this back, and I even wrote some notes here to myself. We had warm blue, cool red, and purple. And then we had cool blue, purple, cool red, warm red. So in this painting we used cool and warm red, right? And this here we had cool or warm and cool blue. So why don't we apply some yellows to this one so we can see what yellow does as part of an underpainting. So let's get out our palette, and we're going to apply some yellow washes, and I think we're also going to apply a gray on here, maybe even a couple of grays. So maybe we'll see how things go. So to get started to do this, I'm going to need a brush. I want a rag in case I make any mistakes or I'm a little bit heavy with the paint, I can use that to wipe things up. I'm going to need some water. And I think we're good to go. So I am going to, let's say, now my palette is a bit muddy here. I'm not so concerned about the overall kind of cleanliness of my washes. So I'm just, there's quite a lot of water on here. And I've got now this warm yellow, and there was a little bit of white that I accidentally mixed in here, but that's not going to be such a big deal here. So mixing this warm yellow, and I forgot to do this last episode until afterwards. I had to actually watch the previous episode, so I'm just going to write this on here. Right, warm yellow. That way, when I'm painting it, so we're going to do warm yellow here. Let's do cool yellow up here. And then let's do a orange down here, which is going to be 50% warm and 50% warm red. Okay. And then here we're going to put just a neutral gray. Is that how you spell neutral? It's N-E-U or N-U-E, neutral gray. 50% white, 50% black. Just because that is a typical thing that a lot of artists might do, is put down just a neutral color for your background. So this is going to give us a nice opportunity to see how a bunch of different colors are going to interact when we paint over it afterwards. Okay, so I got my warm yellow, and I'm going to paint this over top here. You could see, okay, maybe I'm going to have an orange up here anyway, because I just realized that this pencil that I used, this red pencil, is a water-soluble watercolor pencil. Michael, not thinking too clearly today. So How do I get rid of that? Well, since it's water soluble, maybe I'll just brush it out here. Mix it into my paint. And look at this, I've got some eraser shavings in there. Basically, I'm trying to show you everything you're not supposed to do in one painting as quickly as possible. Okay, so again, my pencil lines, you can see they're mixing into the paint. Now, it has altered this color a little bit. It's probably gone a little bit towards the orange, which I'm planning on painting down in this corner, right? But we'll make this one even more orangey as we go. So, speaking of which, we've got our warm red right here. So, I'm going to take a bit of this warm red, plop it down in here. Let's get a little more water on my brush. Turn this into a warm orange. You can see how there's some of that white in here is making this actually a bit more of a fleshy color than I was anticipating, but anyway. Now, obviously, you don't have, you could just do one wash in one of the, like you could just, let's say, do this orange over the entire canvas. You don't have to do it like I'm doing it. I'm just using this as an opportunity to show you what happens, because we could do yellow today, cool yellow next class, orange, and that would take us like a month in order to be able to see all these results, and I'd rather be able to kind of move through things a little bit faster, so that you can kind of get an idea of what is happening here. Another alternative is I could paint this same painting 4 different times, and we could see what happens then. Madeline says I spelled neutral correctly, so good. Okay, thank you. That's the one thing with when you're writing with a pencil. I keep waiting for the autocorrect to pop up. You're so used to writing on a computer these days. Okay, so we're going to put the cool yellow down here. Now, as we dilute this yellow, these 2 yellows are going to start looking pretty similar. So just to kind of, I just want to point that out right now, so we're not going to be too surprised when that happens. And since I've got a whole bunch of this yellow, it's kind of got blue and green there, I'm going to scoop a little bit out there that looks like it's fairly... Okay. Let's just paint this in here. Again, it's picking up the pencil, color pencil, so I'm just going to brush it right into my color. Now, I don't know how well that's, if you can see the differences. I can certainly see a difference between the 2 yellows. It's not dramatic, but this is definitely warmer than this one. This one, looks maybe more mustardy versus this one looks maybe a little bit more lemony, right? So this one has more orange in it, whereas this one has no orange, except maybe the orange of my pencil. They got mixed in there a little bit, but it has a bit more of an intense color quality, whereas this one has a more earthy quality. What are we gonna, when we actually make this painting and it's all done, are we gonna be able to see those differences? Good question. Are the differences going to be dramatic? Probably not dramatic. So I could see some person saying, if this is not going to cause like radical change, why bother? Or this just seems maybe like a little bit of like fussing. the reason beyond just adding, you know, so we don't have all these little white spots, is like, I don't know how to really describe it, but there's just a vibrancy or energy that happens when you have that color underneath the other color. The only way that I can think of it is it just looks more professional. It looks more complex. So we want to have our paintings that we want the painting to look maybe more complex, more professional, I assume, right? Okay, so just button up my shirt here so my microphone isn't moving around too much. Okay. Jackie says, I like watching live the first time, then I go back and rewatch and paint along. That's a good idea. Madeline says, now you have to duct tape a banana to the wall and call it art if you want to cause outrage. Yeah, I don't know if anyone's seen that image of an artist. I think it was Maurizio Catalan who did that. Who is, I think he's an Argentinian artist. Anyway, duct taped a banana to the wall, and I think it ended up selling for some ridiculous amount of money, and of course that gets into the newspapers. But he is actually, if it is Maurizio Catalan, I think he is actually a really talented and interesting artist, and I don't know the motivation behind doing that. So I'm making another wash, this time a gray wash. So I got white and black to mix to make gray. This is a bit of a darker gray. I could lighten it up literally by taking an extra little bit of white, and rather than mixing it in there, I'm going to mix it on to the palette, or directly onto the canvas. Now, one thing you may notice right off the top is a lot of my drawing just disappeared. Right? So that's, again, the covering power of this of the gray paint. And so some of you might look at this and go, ooh, I don't know if I want to do that to my painting, because that's going to it'll cause some difference, just like this one. We're going to see those changes come through at the end. So you don't have to do this. If you want to just paint or if you want to paint another color down here, maybe a different orange down here, by all means, go right ahead. I'm just using this painting and these classes as an opportunity to really demonstrate how these different processes work. And afterwards, it's really interesting to talk about what happened. And again, that's what I did last night. I spent maybe 20 minutes just really talking about the visual result of that previous painting's process. So, because I think it's super fascinating. Now you can see I had a little something down there, and I wiped it away, and it revealed the canvas below. I'm not going to try to fix that. I don't really. It's not going to make a big difference in the overall painting. As this dries, I can start seeing the pencil lines coming back a little bit. I'll wait till it's fully dry before I do anything on there. So now what are we going to do? Let's take a look at the original painting again. And I haven't done any planning on how I'm going to approach this, so I'm thinking about all this stuff in real time while we look at this painting and think about, like, what are the next steps. Well, I think the next step that I'm going to do is since this is wet, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to work on maybe a little bit of the background. I'm going to put in a color into the background, and I'm going to put we're going to mix like a brown that's going to go over some of this area here, and I think I'll still keep this greenish fabric that the cat is on. Okay. So let's mix a brown, this is the first time we've mixed a brown, so this is going to be helpful for everybody here. I'm just going to move this to the side. So how do we get brown? What is brown? Let's look at our color wheel again. So if we look at the color wheel, there's no brown on the outside here, right? We've got red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, red, right? So it keeps on going around here. We did find that as these colors we started mixing colors across the color wheel, right? That the colors started to lose their intensity and became darker and grayer, kind of just, as a less less bright. So the lesson in that is when we're mixing colors across the color wheel, and they don't just have to be these two, right? You could mix an orange and mix it with blue. You could mix a purple and mix it with yellow. And those colors are crossing directly across, and as they cross, they're going to go in towards a kind of a brownish quality. And essentially to get so the long story short, essentially to get a brown, you're mixing all three of the yellow, blue, and red together. It's just which combination of them are you going to do, right? So we can get brown if we mix a yellow and a blue, and therefore have green, and we add a little bit of red, we're going to get a brown. We could get a brown if we mix an orange, right? Because we'll have yellow and red, and we add a little bit of blue, because now we've got this color crossing right across the neutral core. We could get a brown if we mix red and blue and get a purple and mix it with a little bit of yellow, right? It's just, so long story short is if we have a little bit of each color, we're going to get a brown, and it's just a matter of which colors we're mixing together to get that brown hue. So, I guess then the question is, well, which brown do we want to get? So if we look at this painting, in the background, it's a relatively warm brown, right? So it's not a blue brown, it's a red brown, right? And so people are like, what are we talking like? So if we want to get a reddish brown as opposed to a blue brown, then let's go back to our color wheel here, right? So essentially to get that warm brown, we would want to use some warm color. So we're going to mix an orange, right? We're going to use a warm red and a warm yellow and make an orange. And we're going to add a little bit of blue. And therefore, it's going to be like orange with a little bit of blue, making it warm. If, on the other hand, we wanted a cool brown, then we could do something like mixing, let's say, the cool yellow and the cool blue, and we would get this really bright, cold green, right? And then we could go and add some cool red right across the color wheel, and boom, we're going to have a very different brown. And part of me maybe even thinks we should do both browns while we're here. Since let's do that. I'm sitting here just talking about it. Let's just do it. So where should we put a cool brown and a warm brown? Well, if I go back to this painting here, if this area is in the background, let's make this the cool brown so that it moves backwards behind the cat. And then down here, let's put a warm brown down here so that it comes forward in front of the cat. Okay, so let's, I think this gray is just about done. So we'll focus in on a cool brown in the background, and then we'll add the warm brown in the foreground. So, let me see. Let's move me over here. Get more space to do all this. Okay. So let's mix the cool brown first. And I do have a bunch of colors here, so I think I'm going to mix this right over here. So, like I said, I'm going to take, I know the label has fallen off here. This was the cool yellow and the cool blue. So let's take some cool yellow, put it down here. It's still quite wet. I'm trying to get as much off there without contaminating it with, and I'm going to take some cool blue. So this is a really beautiful, super saturated green color, like lime green, right? And we've used this before. So let's now, we're going to turn it into a cool brown by, I think I need some, I don't have any cool red left on my palette, so again, because the cool red has broken off, so I'm going to put a little blop of cool red on here, and I'll just turn this. So here's my cool red, right? The cool red, the naphthol, or primary magenta, sorry. Right, I'm going to take some on my brush here, and then let's rub this into this mixture. Now, one thing I'm just noticing as I'm doing this, because my palette was dirty, all of these little pieces of acrylic that were dried are kind of being, pulled up, and they're getting into the mix, which is going to drive me crazy a little bit. So let's try mixing. I'm going to need to scoop up all of this yellow. Let's put this in here. We're going to add more. Look what's happening to this color. It looks, it is not a pretty color, really. It has this kind of garbage pail, green brown, like barf kind of quality. It's gray. It's just it looks like things that you see rotting in your compost. And that's again because what we've created, and I don't need to belabor all of these things, but I think the more you know how to do this, the easier this is going to be, right? It's because what we've done is we started by mixing this color, mixing these two colors to make this color, and then we've added this color. And so that mix going right across the center of the color wheel is producing this color which has like very little intensity left, right? It's a very low, but let's paint it in here, right? Okay, so now I paint this in there, and it looks still, it's pretty drab. It's almost gray, which, it's the neutral core, so I'm going to add a little bit more red back into this mixture just to make it a little bit more brown-like. Okay, so now we can paint this in here. So maybe you can see it looks more earthy again now. Okay, and sometimes I got to add more paint in here to keep that mixture going. I'm not doing a wash. I'm trying to literally cover this surface. Now we're going to add details over top of it as we go, but And you can see there's these little pieces of acrylic that my brush is pulling up because my palette was dirty and that paint dried. And that drives me nuts. And it's a good reminder of why I should be, if my palette isn't airtight and I leave it there overnight, that is going to happen, right? And if it drives you nuts, then a good reason to not do that. Oops, let's put some more red here. Because basically every time I go dip my brush back in here, I'm kind of like scrubbing, cleaning this palette, and it's just getting, you know, it's pulling up all that paint that was there. So I'm just going to bring this down into here. You can see the difference, right, now that I'm painting on the gray. And maybe, you know what, I'm just going to draw some of these details back here. So this, I think, was the tail coming over. It's because that white really covered it. So I think what I'm going to do now is we're going to transition from this cool brown in the background to the warm brown in the foreground under here. So let's, I'm going to wash my brush. I'm going to just wipe off that excess paint onto here, this rag, and I should mention that, you know, I was disparaging about this color and kind of comparing it to what the color you see in a compost. It's just there's not a lot of life in that color, but that's not, or it's not an intense color. And you know, maybe one of the takeaways that people may get from that is like, well, I just never want to use that color ever. If anything, you would actually want to use this color that we just made quite a lot. And if you look at most paintings, you look at like any painting by Rembrandt or Leonardo da Vinci or any of the so-called master painters, this color that we just used is probably one of the most common colors you're going to see in those paintings. They are very brown-like paintings, right? And this would be the color you would see in the background in almost every single one of those, including the Mona Lisa, right? So when I say that it's kind of an ugly color, I guess I'm doing it a great disservice. I'm just meaning that it's not an intense color. It's not a candy color. Okay, so let's mix a warm brown down here. So as I said before, we've already mixed this warm red and the yellow, warm yellow here. Sorry, the warm red and the warm yellow. We did that for this area here. So basically, we're just mixing that color again. Maybe I might need to get a little more yellow on my palette here. So I'm just going to squeeze some warm yellow down there. And I may use this brown that I mix right here a few more times, including on the cat later on. But so I got my warm, nice, beautiful orange here, right? And now, let's look at the color wheel again. So what I've just done here is I've mixed, I got the warm red and the warm yellow, and I'm making this orange, right? This is the color on here. Maybe I'm a little bit closer to here, a little more yellow on there, but either way, what we're going to do is we're going to mix it with the warm blue, right? So we have 3 warm colors in this new paint that we're going to create, and it's going to go brown again, but it's going to be a different brown than the first brown we mixed. Okay, so there's a little bit of black on here, so I'm going to take a little bit of the blue. You see there's blue on my brush. Put it down here. There's actually quite a lot on there. So mix it back in here. Now you see it's going kind of green. So let's put a lot more red back into here to make it brown again. Right, and if I compare it here, I mean, totally different brown, right? So this is a much more like sienna like kind of quality, right? So it's brown, but it's not nearly as dark. It's warmer because there's 3 warm pigments in there. If I wanted to make it darker, it's just a matter of adding a little bit more blue in here. And it might look a little green on the palette, the more blue I put in there, but anyway, so I'm going to paint this down here. So, I mean, those 2 colors couldn't be more different, right? And let's, how much of this, okay, it looks like there's a blanket there, so let's paint this here. And I'm going to come back over top of this a little bit. I'm just going to blend these in a bit. Now this is, that previous layer is a little bit dry underneath there, but I'm just going to, we'll kind of hide this as we go. Okay. Again, if I wanted it to be darker, I would just add a little more blue to the mixture. Okay. So now I think we'll also do the same sort of thing. We're going to add a cool green here. We're going to put a warm green down here. So we're going to have all of these different cool and warm colors going on in the painting. And you know what? Just while I've got this brown on my brush, I think I'm going to apply a bunch of it into, because I'm just looking at this painting, and this color that I've mixed is not too far off a lot of the kind of the base color, or like the local color we would say, of this cat. So I'm actually going to I'm going to just fill it in, and I'm going to make it maybe less dark, kind of brown, and maybe make it a little bit more orangey. So I'm just adding the same color without washing my brush. I'm going to take this and just apply it over this entire picture. And let me bring... So one of the things, I'm just going to do a few little areas that I'm going to keep paint free are these eyes, because I want to keep those eyes as intense as possible. But beyond that, I'm going to paint over this whole thing. And I could have done this first. The only reason I didn't do it first is this gray down here was drying at that time, so I decided to work on the background brown first. And another question somebody might have is, well, why didn't we just put this as a wash? This orange here, we could have just started and gone directly to this wash, which would be fair, you know, especially if we were really limited on time. We could just go directly to this. We could have even done the whole canvas in this color, to be quite honest. The reason why we're not doing that is mostly because I'm taking my time a little bit here, and I want to explain. I want you know, these different types of washes, how the yellow, these 2 different yellows and the gray and everything are working. So there's this. And again, all of this stuff is taking some time right off the top of the bat of painting, but ultimately it's going to save us time when we're painting, when we're doing the last few coats of paint on there. So this is the kind of thing when people, you know, if you walk into an artist studio and you see a painting like this, you're like, oh my goodness, what kind of sad amateur is this, right? But it because if you don't understand how the painting process works, it just looks like a really sloppy, unfinished painting. But really, right now, we're like halfway through this painting, right? It doesn't maybe look like that, but doing these kind of steps is ultimately going to be a major time saver. Okay, so just cleaning my brush off here. And we're going to add a cool green here and a warm green down here. We might as well, right? The more we explore these kind of fundamental parts of painting, I think the easier the last 35 or so paintings we're going to do are going to be. So how do we mix a cool green, cool yellow, cool blue, cool green? Now this might be, if we paint this super saturated green color right here, it might be a little bit wild. Although, you know what, I do see, you know what, let's, I think what I'm going to do is we'll be a little bit closer to this green. So it's going to be more of a blue-green than a yellow-green, right? So we're going to try to mix that there. So I need a little more cool yellow on my palette. And still got a little bit of cool blue. So let's just take a bit of this, put that there, put some cool yellow. Look at that color. Does it come across on your screen? This here is like one of my favorite colors of all time. It looks really kind of grayish on my monitor anyway, but with my eyes, this looks, it looks like this really clear or clean mountain spring kind of quality, right? So let's paint that in here. This cool green going into the background. You can see I'm mixing the color kind of over and over again rather than one solid, clean green. And let's say we'll go down to around here. Look at the difference, right, between, this is the warm yellow, cool yellow, and the orange, right? Very different kind of results here. And then let's mix the warm green under here. Clean my brush off because I don't want either blue of that cool blue and cool yellow on my brush. I've just got this little, just FYI, I just get, you know, these little clamps from, you know, the hardware store. Put that on my table, and I can just drape a cloth over top of it. That way, it's not, you know, if it does. I mean, I have just a concrete floor that I stand on, so I don't care if paint drips onto the floor. If this is your, you know, new kitchen and you had this expensive new linoleum on there, that probably would not be desirable, but okay. So how do we get a warm green, right? So to get a warm green, we're going to mix the warm yellow and the warm blue. Now we could get a kind of little bit more of a neutral green here, where we've got a warm yellow and a cool blue, and so it's not quite as intense, but we could go even warmer here. Of course, it's going to be a little bit more brown, right? It won't be this intense color, so we're going to paint that down here. So let's just see what results we get from it. So I'm going to take my, there's some black in there. That black color could cause this to be a really dull green, which I don't want. All right, so I'm going to take these two. Hopefully I don't get too much of this purple mixing in here. And let's mix this here. Okay, let's just paint them side by side just so we can see the difference. Right, very different green. It's not only is it a warm green, but we're painting it onto this warm orange underneath here. Yeah, I probably could be using more more paint on my brush as I paint this. The reason why I'm doing these kind of thinner layers of paint is mostly just because of the fact that I'm trying to get this whole painting done within a couple of hours. And if I'm really heavy with really thick paint, it's just going to take long for this painting to dry, and I don't want to have to be up at midnight again working on this painting again, right? So, but there's nothing to stop you from using thicker coats of paint. You just might have to be a little bit patient and wait for those colors to dry. Not sure what I was doing down there, so I'm just going to brush that all together. Okay, so again, this painting may have like a really unfinished quality. At the same time, I mean, I really like it. I love the way this looks already. Like, I can already, maybe it's because I've been painting for 20 years or 30 years, really, that I look at it and I've painted enough that I know what stage this is. And this doesn't worry me at all. I get excited because I think, oh, okay, this is the base layer, and when I start painting on top of it, I don't have to paint this color because it's already there. And there's that extra complexity where there's now 2 layers of paint. We have the original yellows under here, orange and gray, and this top layer. So we've got 2 layers and then a third, right? So it's just that level of construction that is just satisfying. It's one of those things maybe what is satisfying about it in some way is, if you don't know how to paint, when you look at a painting like this, it's mystifying because you're just like, I have no idea how that was done, right? And so there's maybe less of that my kid could do that kind of response, because if I was to show you this painting at the beginning of today's class just like this and say, okay, make this, even experienced artists would be like, I'm not really sure how you got to this point. Which again is why it's helpful to make little notes to yourself like that on the back of the painting, right? So this tells me what the base colors were in those original underpainting washes. Okay. Heidi says to mix, or maybe it's to get brown, you mix orange and add some black and white, maybe? I'm not sure what, to make a brown. You could, that technique of adding black and white to an orange, you're going to get an orange, but you're going to get a very different orange than the orange that I got here, because what you're doing is essentially adding tone to that orange, So you are lowering the intensity of that color in the same way that we are using adding the blue and crossing across the center of the color wheel. It does work. It's just going to be different because the main thing is when we add white to that color, it's going to make the color way more opaque, right? So less transparent. And I want a little bit of this color from the previous layers to kind of come through and optically mix with the color I'm painting on top of it. And you know, black and white are colors that are really are going to desaturate the color quite dramatically. So if you've watched that Gamblin video I posted a little while ago about the introduction to color, in fact, I think this is such a great video. I'm not going to show it because this video will be taken down by okay, this is going to open up in there because this is their website. So I strongly recommend you watch this video. You could even pause mine right now and open up another tab and watch this. I just put it there in the chat. But this does a, I wonder if there's an image on here that shows. See, this is where I just geek out on. Okay, so here's kind of a screenshot. You know what? I don't know if maybe I'm gonna stay on track here because I could go down that whole talking about color for ages, and I want to finish this painting. But yes, Heidi is right there. You can add gray to orange, and you're going to get a kind of a brown. But I would rather use the other colors in the color wheel to get that brown because I can get more nuance in there, and I can use the other colors to just create maybe a bit more of a vibrant brown. Yeah, so anyway, because I can still add black and white to this color and this color and this, you know, so yeah. So what do I want to do now? Let's look back at this painting here and think about what the next step is going to be. Everything looks like it's pretty dry. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to do most of the cat first, and then I'm going to come back to the background and I'm going to tidy that up. And then the final things I'm going to do is add this black outline or really dark blue maybe. I'm going to default to a dark blue rather than black just because I want this painting to be as vibrant as possible. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit of this, pretty much the same warm green. Where was it? This warm green. I'm going to put a little bit of that in this face, and I can start going down to a smaller brush now. Also, you'll notice today I don't have any music playing. You know, there's been, some feedback there that people don't like the music. Some people like the music, so I'm just doing one without the music for today. Now this warm green, is this too warm here if I paint? Maybe. I could, if I add a little bit of cool yellow into here, just to brighten it up a tiny tad. I can go brighter as I go, but I'm just going to apply a bunch of this in here. So this is right now a fairly earthy, and it looks like there is more of a cool green in there as well, and possibly even a little bit in those eyes. But again, those are all things that I can add later on. Just trying to put in some of these stripes. Okay, where there's a little bit of green. She's using these kind of greens in some of these shadowy areas to give it a little bit of rather than just using kind of black, she's using it to kind of give it a little bit of extra pop. See, maybe a little bit on the tail here. Okay, I think I'm now going to add a little bit of the cool green in here. And I'm going to paint it directly into this warm area. So I'm kind of mixing the paint as we go here. And what that does is it's just going to kind of dilute the intensity of this new color I'm applying here. There's not many more, maybe a little bit in here. I think that might have been too much, so I'm just going to come back with my warm green and kind of touch this up here. It's not too much. Okay. Now let's, what else? Okay, I'm just, just kind of looking over and thinking what else needs to be done here. I think I'm going to add a little, I'm going to take some of this warm brown that we had down here, and I'm going to add a little bit of it into the painting again. So that was, and I'm just going to actually use the same brush now, rather than cleaning my brush. I like when things get a little bit muddy. I know it's going to just drive people absolutely bonkers, but so I got my warm yellow. I'm going to take a little bit of warm blue in here. So it's going to be quite red. Let me see. And I'm going to give myself lots of permission here to make changes just out for the sake of convenience. Just because, you know, ideally I'd get this painting almost done within the next half hour. That'd be great. So again, I'm not here all night long doing this stuff. So some of these areas are things I can clean up later on. I'm going to use that dark color to go over top of it to clean up some of that stuff. Like looking around, like where does this color need to go? few stripes on its belly like this. You can see some of this is quite dry brush, right? Because I might kind of paint over a little bit of this as we go later on. Oh, there was this bit of red here. Okay. Jackie says it looks really cool already. Awesome. Thank you, Jackie. Okay. Let's see. So we got that kind of reddish brown. I mean, it looks like red here, but this was, you know, compared to the actual red out of the tube, it's much closer to brown, right? But it looks different when it's next to these other colors on the painting, which is something to always kind of keep in mind. Is it doesn't really matter what it looks like on your palette. What is important is what it looks like down here on the painting itself. So I'm going to need a little bit more warm yellow. I'm going to start painting some orange. And so let's go back down here. So I'm just mixing some of this warm red into the previous color that was there. Just brightening it up a little bit. And let's put a few kind of stripes around here. And you can see basically it just disappeared, right, as I painted it right in there. So what I'm going to do is let's add some white into this color. Alright, so she's got these kind of stripes. As I'm going, I'm picking up the color from the painting, and that's quite all right. You know, when it comes to white, just like adding black, we want to be a little bit, you know, careful about how heavy-handed you get with it, and sort of applying it. It's always easier to build up little layers and just keep on going slowly and slowly, rather than just sort of launching right into a big blob of one color. Got these kind of round paws. These remind me a little bit of like Maud Lewis, who we'll make a painting of later on as we go. So, you know, it's this kind of stuff I just love. Like, this is the kind of thing where I can just kind of zone out and I can just paint for hours and hours and hours like this. This is, like, I find, like, how to describe the kind of experience of painting like this? This, for me, feels very, I feel super calm when I'm doing this kind of thing. Like, there's not a lot of, it's pretty hard to feel like really anxious when you're doing this kind of thing. I mean, I can imagine if this is the very first time you've painted and you haven't done enough painting to really know if you're on the right track or not. Here's a little bit of yellow I'm introducing here. So that's why just the more and more you paint, the more familiar you get with the results, and you're more aware of like what's happening throughout the process, so that when things happen, you're not so surprised. You're just like, oh, okay, I guess that's where we are in this painting right now. So, So this face is going to be a bit of a challenge as we go here, but we'll do it one step at a time. The other thing, like, what I like about this part of the process is I'm really just, I mean, I'm looking at the original a little bit, but I'm also just allowing myself to kind of put some color here and there, and if anything, really just fill it up. And then later on, I can go in and delete things or move things around. Just kind of this, I think I'm going to try to integrate this area. Looks like she may have even had that same problem in her painting where she was trying to figure out how to turn this. This is the hind leg and the tail there. Okay, where else? Let's this paw down here. Okay, I think I need a little bit darker brown for some of this stuff on the back. So I'm going to take some blue again. I'm going to put it right down here. Some red. All right, so we got this warm brown. And where should we put that? This paw up here. You know what, I'm just gonna smooth that over here. Okay. So again, we got now dark green. We add some blue to it, and then we got this dark warm brown again. Anywhere else I want to put this? It's this layering of colors that I think is really satisfying. And I'm also just starting to kind of do the darker areas of, you know, that I ultimately I'm going to outline, but this kind of just having a little bit of darker brown rather than just going right to a black is just going to help create a little bit more definition here. I don't know if I've ever painted a cat before. No, I'm just thinking. I have had none of my own, but I have lived with people who've had cats growing up, and I'm a bit more of a dog person myself. I just really I haven't actually talked about Suzanne's paintings really yet, so maybe I'll get into that shortly here. Take like a short little break while I do that. So you can see, like right now, this paint here is a bit of like, it's a muddy mess, but it's really a mess of warm browns, right? And it keeps changing. Basically, I just got there's the warm yellow, warm red, and a little bit of warm blue in here. And there's a little bit of white that kind of has been sneaking around in there as well. Like you notice, I haven't added any water on my brush whatsoever. I haven't I haven't cleaned my brush in quite a while. That's, you know, a little bit of a feature of just how I paint personally. But I think that doing that helps kind of create a little bit more variety in your painting. So you're not just kind of going back to these very bright primary colors all the time. There's something about having a bit of a dirty palette that again just makes people think like, oh, I have no idea how they did that painting. It just has a more complex kind of quality. Okay. I think I need more. Now I'm just looking up here. I feel I need a little bit more warm red, orangey stuff going on up here. Just going to blend this into what we had. And you know, as you're painting, you know, at some point it's going to start taking on a life of its own, and allow it to do that. Don't try to make it look exactly like mine or like Suzanne's. Allow it to just, you know, if you started painting and you didn't want any of this green in there, then don't put the green in there. You don't have to put the green in there. No one's forcing you to do anything. In fact, this is, well, that was a little dark. Oh, I kind of like this color. No one is grading you on this project. I'm not. I got enough grading I got to do, speaking of grading. So I just don't want to do any more than I have to. This is a little bit bright. Oops. Well, now they got some white on here. I think I wanted to do white anyway, so let's... What else needs a little bit more white? Got lots of areas up here that she's added white to. The other thing with some of this white is we'll put a bunch in here. We can always remove some of it, and we can always do little bits of touches like this later on after the painting is almost done too. Okay, now I'm going to do a little bit of white in the face here. And I'm actually going to turn the canvas a little bit to make this a little bit easier on myself. Now, hers had more white in there, so. We'll see when I turn it back how I feel. Again, I haven't gone quite as white as she did, but different shape eyes than she had. A little more pinkish than she had. That's all right. We'll get there. So we just need a lot more white here instead. So I'm just going to, since we're just painting the face, I'll move this over a bit. Okay. We're going to put a little bit of blue in here as well. Underneath here. A little bit of a stippling kind of quality to look like the fur kind of furring out there. Okay. So I'm going to need a little bit of blue, and in the blue is ultramarine blue, my warm blue. So I'm just going to mix this right here. And that is in this area here. It needs to be even more white. I got that, this bit of a warmer blue. Add it at a few different places. Whenever you use one color, it's advisable to kind of put it in a few other little places. Now she doesn't really have this same warm blue very many other places on the cat, because she has, you know, a whole other rest of the painting that she would have put these in the flowers, etc. We don't have that part of the painting, so I have to use it elsewhere in the composition that I have. So just putting a little bit of that color elsewhere, just going to help integrate that blue because there's not been a lot of it elsewhere in this picture. So. Let's do, I think we're going to do the eyes next. And which green do we want? Well, we want a pretty bright color. She's got this cool yellow, maybe even a little bit of cool blue. We don't want to be too greenish. A little bit more on the yellow side of things. Just a little hints of green. And I got that. Just gonna paint a little bit of color elsewhere here. Okay, I'm gonna have to speed things up a little bit. I just get so excited about painting that I kind of lose track of time a bit. What else do I want to do here? I'm gonna put a little bit of this darker color down. Oops. I say I'm gonna put a darker color and then it comes. I do something much brighter than I expected, but okay. There's that nose, which I should have done when I had orange on my brush. Nice clean orange. So let's get some warm red, just a tad yellow in here. Maybe even more red on there. Okay, so what I do want to try to bring this to some resolution within the next like 20 minutes here, and so I'm going to start mixing a darker brown, and we're going to start like a really dark brown, and we're going to start doing some outlining and kind of a little bit playing around in some of those shadows back there, and then we'll be close to being done here. So I just mixed a little bit. I need some more warm red. So my warm red, my warm yellow, we can even do some of this right here. Warm red, warm yellow, and blue. Alright, so we got this dark brown. Now let's make it even darker than this, right? So we got this brown. I could use black, obviously. I'm going to add some cool blue. So I just took a little bit of the cool blue, that on my brush, and let's start mixing this into the mixture. Alright, so that's going to make this same color a bit darker. It's not black, but it is going to be, as we're going to see here in a second, a pretty dark color. I'm going to start outlining here. Now I can, maybe later in this painting, I could go back and I might even add a little tiny highlights of black. But if I don't need it, why use it? Because black is just such an intense color. You could see why the Impressionists, you know, they were not into using black for the reason that it just is such a dominant color in a picture. So I'm going to try to take some inspiration from her. Right, you see how quickly, like, these dark lines, all of a sudden the picture starts to kind of, like a Polaroid, starts forming in front of us. Like, oh, now I see what was going on this whole time. All right. It also using like a dark color like this towards the end. And I'm just going back here. I just took a little bit of warm blue and cool blue and putting them in here. So this allows me to kind of clean up some of these edges between colors. Another thing that shouldn't be, that we should kind of remember is the more paint I put on the surface of the picture, you know, if I'm not applying it too thickly, actually makes the whole process of painting easier. Because if you, it's like all of these little potholes in the street are getting covered with, you know, asphalt, and then so all the little holes of, you know, the weave of the canvas gets filled with paint, and then so the canvas is slowly getting smoother and smoother. So when I later on go to do these kind of little touches, they just go on easier because they're kind of able to glide over this a little bit smoother surface. I'm just kind of biding my time before I do anything on the face here, just because some of that white and yellow here were things that I did. Well, let's put some eyes in here, because I think that will change this painting pretty quickly. Right, that's going to help give it some character and life. Okay, so to get some of these finer details, I'm taking my brush. I've got it loaded up with paint. Maybe I'll just get a little more paint in this mixture, make it a bit more. I've got my warm blue. Let's take a little bit more cool blue in here. Now I've got like this really deep a deep brown, but almost like a deep green here, because I haven't added any new red in a little while. And I don't mind that. I think it's, I want this to be, I want my blacks to be as complex as possible. So you see how the painting is starting to kind of really come together with just that black? I think it just makes such a difference, right? And I also think it's really important to wait towards the very end before you do this kind of stuff, so that because it's very hard to, if you do this kind of thing too early, then you get really obsessed with like painting around your black lines. um, and now I'm just going to paint some black in the background, or not black. I haven't used any black in this painting yet, have I? I don't think so. Oh, except when I did the gray down there. So I'm just going to use some of this for the background. Let me see. I'm just going to zoom back out a bit here so I can see what else, if there's anything in this painting that I want to capture. There is some these kind of like flower-like forms. I could try to paint a little bit of that in there. Something going on here. There's going to be some kind of green thing we'll put maybe up there. I don't know what, is that another foot that was there? I don't know what that was. I kind of just omitted it, so. This is. So I can use this other really dark brown, bluish brown, just to kind of accent some of the other lines that I have here. And not necessarily going over top of them so much as just kind of around them and So I'm just kind of making some little bit of stuff up here. Some kind of wrinkle in the fabric or whatever that would have. Is that a chair? I don't really know what I'm looking at in there. It's so kind of dark, but I'm just going to go a little bit nuts. Adding kind of just wavy patterns here that I know that aren't exactly there, but this is just demonstrating that I'm making the painting my own at this point now. What should we got? Maybe just gonna try to hide that line a little bit. Make it just kind of, see how it kind of goes on a diagonal, just to kind of break up that space a bit. Okay, so I got a lot of nice dark lines in here. And I'm going to kind of soften some of this up, maybe, because we had a pretty dark brown in here. I'm going to brighten it back up a bit. And just complicate it a bit by brushing some. Kind of just randomly applying a little bit of this. At this point, I'm not really focused too much on the original painting so much. And really the only reason I'm leaving it up is just for anybody else who's painting along with me, that they can kind of go and do what they like. But I would say if I was working on this paint, I don't really ever paint paintings based on other people's paintings. But if I was, at this point, I would literally turn the original upside down, or the image, or close the book, and just allow this painting to start developing into its own thing. So maybe, just having said that, I'll just, so I don't even really think about it. Here we are. As I go back into my mixture, I just kind of add a little bit more yellow in here, and that's just going to keep this kind of, it's just going to make it look like there's lots of variations of color in here. I probably don't want to cover the entire, that first color that we had there. It's kind of nice for it to show through a bit. And I'm just have this muddy patch of color, and I'm just going to dip in here, get a little bit more yellow on there. There's a little bit of white in there, so that all of these, like this for me, now I really feel like I'm painting something, because I just love all this little variety of stuff going on. I think I was going to paint something green up here, but I've just changed my mind, obviously. Putting a little bit of more warm yellow down into the bottom here, just because This is the closest part of the picture to us. So I want it to be warm and yeah, I don't know how all of these streaks that I'm putting in here are working, but my goal is to kind of wrap this up in about 10 minutes at the very latest here. Okay, the blanket down here was a green. So I'm going to wash my brush, or not wash it, I'm just going to take some of the paint off of it. Keep this bit of a dirty brush kind of thing going on. Let's add, I'm going to go back to this warm blue. It's a little bit dark, so maybe I'll try to go back actually to this part of my palette and kind of paint around here. So it's okay, we'll look at the original. What was here? Okay. Just throwing a bunch of color in there. Not too concerned about how it looks. I just want to try to create some kind of pattern or image. You know, the focus of this image is obviously the cat. So as long as I'm not distracting too much from the cat, then I'm very, very happy. So I got some wet paint on the canvas, and I can, if I'm painting quick enough with this acrylic, I can kind of mix into some of that paint. Taking a little bit of cool yellow, bringing that in. Right now, this is, you know, I'm painting brown over top of this green, right? And yet it looks green, right? The overall effect in this area is still a green part of the picture, and that's what I want. I want, and that's one of the reasons why we would paint that green down there to begin with. So what I'm at this point right here, I'm just using some cool yellow and blending it back into this mess of colors that I've got up there. Careful down here with that same cool yellow, because it's really going to pop in maybe a way that I'm not so into. So just put some warm yellow on here, just like I was doing down here. Brush a little bit of this warm yellow into the bottom. Let's get green again. This, I'll admit, what I'm doing here is a bit of an afterthought. Like, it's not, I haven't really thought through too carefully what I'm doing down here. I don't know if And to be honest, I'm painting so quickly that I'm not really even evaluating myself. I'm just throwing paint around, and then in just a couple seconds here, I'll kind of step back and take another look and see. And this is the way I like to work, is I like to just fill it up, and I can always change things, move things around, change the colors, add colors. Okay, maybe I'm going to put my brush down. I'm going to take a second just to step back and look at the painting. Now, it's going to be different on my monitor than it is in real life, so excuse me for trying to kind of, in fact, this is, I mean, you know, what I would do is, let's see, save that, save, now let's just prop this up. So what I would do is kind of just set my painting up against something, like against a wall, you know, and take a second, maybe trying to find a place where I can lean this up here where you can kind of see a bit of it. And I just want to kind of see the painting from a little bit further away. Like, so far, I've been painting this I've been like this close to this painting the entire time. No one is going to look at the painting that closely. As much as I would love for everybody to look at the painting like this and just go, wow, look at all the details. No one's going to do that, right? Maybe people will look at it like this close, but really most people are going to be, you know, if it's sitting above my couch, it's probably going to be like right up here or something, right? You know, you can still see it. It's quite, you know, 2 arms lengths away, right? So it doesn't so much matter what it looks like up close. I mean, it does, in that we want people to want to get up close to the painting, but it's really going to have to work from back here. All right, so I take a quick little look, and I see a few little things here. I feel like down here I need something, and I don't think that green will work down there, so I'm just going to grab a different brush. I want maybe one of these colors. Just to break that up a little bit. Maybe it needs a little bit more brown or something. Something here was just driving me a little bit nuts. And I haven't looked at the original. Let's bring the original back up here. Where'd that go? I guess I gotta do it again. Okay. Oops. I'm sorry, I'm gonna bring this back here. Sorry. Here's the original, and let's just zoom in to the painting so we can kind of see them as much side by side as possible. Do I want to do any more? I think there's a little bit of this blue. I think I need, let's get just another brush. Just gonna add So this blue is just a mixture. This is cool blue with some warm blue in there. Yikes, okay. I'm getting a little heavy-handed in there. In a way that I'm not... So I just mixed a little bit of white on my brush to soften this up. And then there was some of these little whiskers. I don't know, you guys. You know, I could really finagle around in here with the face of this cat. I could still play around with this. I'm not too happy with just these whiskers that I just started doing here, which is driving me crazy because, you know, like I always say, that, you know, the accidents happen when you're closest to home and you just start getting so excited about being done and you kind of just get a little bit sloppy. And that's a little better. That's better. I think there was just more pure white in here. Madeline says, I have a lot of trouble with the shadows because they always look terrible when they're partially done, no matter how beautiful the finished product ends up being. Madeline says, that looks awesome now, but when you first laid the black stripes down, I had to tell myself, trust the artist a few times. Donna says, yours looks great. Mine was so bad, I took all the leftover paint and painted over it. I will try again next or this weekend. Oh, that's a bummer. You know, if it's not turning out, one thing you can always do is just let it dry, walk away, turn the painting against the wall, which is, if you ever go to an artist studio, you might see a lot of paintings against the wall and wonder what's going on there. Yeah, I think I'm happy with this. I feel like I can walk away from this feeling like I got everything that I wanted done on here. Yeah, could I paint on it for longer? Absolutely. Absolutely, I could continue working on it. But, you know, like Kenny Rogers used to say, you gotta know when to hold him, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, right? So, you know, sometimes, you know, if you're, that's actually one of the reasons why I like kind of paintings that are a little bit unfinished, is it's sort of like, you know what, I think I've got everything that needs to be there is there. Anything more that I'm going to do to it is it really necessary to really bring it to like a Mona Lisa level of completion, right? Probably not, right? This is, I think, all the details that need to be there are there. I think what's interesting, maybe just to wrap up, is just thinking about how the different washes that we put on there to begin with have affected things. So let's take a quick little look before we call it a day. So we had warm yellow, cool yellow on the top, and orange and gray. So here's my cool yellow, warm yellow, gray, and orange. How have they affected the picture? So let's just take a couple seconds just to kind of talk about that. These two yellows up here, I feel like the difference between them is almost negligible. I don't see them having affected the overall picture in any significant way. It's hard. It's really like if you were to tell me this was the warm red or warm yellow and this was the cool yellow, it would be hard for me. Where I do notice a difference is actually under the green. So it's been a little bit neutralized by the browns and the oranges, but the green here, I can really tell this is the cool yellow. I can see it coming through here, the way it's mixing with the green over top of it. It's just a little, it's more of an intense green than the green down here, which is what we want. We want this cool green up here, which is further away than the warm green closer to us. But I don't think it would have made too much of a difference if I had just covered this whole thing with the warm and yellow, with the warm and cool yellow, sorry. Down here we have the warm, what was this? This was orange, right? So basically we have warm yellow and warm red down here. And so that's actually working really well for being in our foreground, right? It just makes this feel like already coming a little bit closer to us. So rather than having kind of just painted a square here, I could have maybe painted the warm yellow down to here and then painted, cool yellow up here and around here, and then left this as a warmer yellow. That could have been an option. The main area where it's a little bit obvious because we see this kind of line cutting through here, but this is the gray down here. And one thing I notice about the gray is that this area just feels a little bit darker than these areas, right? So it doesn't have, like, we can see like the intensities of these colors like are cut in half really quickly as they move into this area. So this part of the painting is a little bit less intense because the light is going into the painting, going through all these layers, hits the gray, and is sort of absorbed, and then the less light is coming back up through these colors to our eyes. So it's this gray area would have been a better area just to apply in some of the shadowy areas. So if I had, let's say, applied this gray into the browner areas, or just used it as a highlight for some of, so some people are like, well, then if you don't like it, like, why would we even have used gray? Like, what would be the purpose? Well, this is going to be a little bit of a preview for episodes further down the line. And do I even, you know what? I think the episode's long enough now that I'm not going to explain it, but, oh, there we've got my overhead camera just went out, which is kind of perfect timing because we're going to wind down anyway. But we are going to do some paintings where we begin the entire painting with gray, and then we apply color at the very, very end of the painting. And that's just another process that many artists use. So I want to show you how it works, but this is just a little bit of a preview. And so some of you may be like, well, that clearly I'm never going to use gray ever. There's going to be a reason why we're going to want to use this, but I just want to kind of just a little bit of a preview for that area. Okay. Amy says, I love this one. Peter says, I made my cat too fat and now it looks like Garfield. Yeah, I mean, sometimes that happens with your painting, right? The painting just takes on a life of its own, and sometimes it's a little bit hungrier than other paintings, right? Or cats. Hey, Madeline says, Peter, you truly made a happy accident. A happy cat, right? And Jackie says, I love it. Thanks for showing your whole artistic process too. It's so much more valuable for me as a learner than just being given prescriptive steps. Thank you. Well, thank you guys for watching. Without you guys, it would be a little bit creepy for me to be talking out loud into the void for 2 hours. Or maybe this is all in my imagination. But so thank you guys for tuning in and watching, and for all the great comments in the comments section. If this is the first time you're watching this channel, I would love it if you were to subscribe, if you were to like the video on your way out. And you know, there's a couple hundred people will watch this video, and then 10 people will like it. I don't know. So whenever I'm watching videos, I'm always just like. It always helps out those content creators. So liking the video is super helpful. And if you want to support the channel by leaving a small donation of $1, $5, $50, $5,000, or whatever, a brand new Ferrari, no donations will be turned away. So the link to the PayPal is below, as well as my links to the various different social media. And I know that I've said over and over and over again that I want to show all of the great work you guys have done. It's just been a really busy week. Next week is Thanksgiving on Monday, and it's reading week at the university I teach at, so I have the week off. I'll still have to do some bunch of grading, but anyway, that'll give me a little bit of an extra time to put together a little presentation of all the great work that you guys have created. So I would love to see the paintings that you guys have made today. And so send those pictures to me, or maybe last week's pictures, or any of the other paintings that we've made today. You can send them directly through Facebook messages, or you could post it to your Facebook and then tag me in it. Same thing with Twitter and Instagram, etc. So I would love to be able to show all of you all the great work that other people, including yourself, hopefully, have created, because I think that's where it's also really inspiring. And not only that, I'll give you feedback on your paintings and help you to deduce maybe what went wrong in your painting, because I know that's something that you know, people are like, why is my painting turning out so different than yours, right? Well, let's figure it out, and the only way I can help you is if I see your paintings. So long story short, that's enough for me today. And if you haven't seen last night's episode that I recorded, and you just cannot get enough of me, and there's plenty of content. There's a whole 40 episode drawing series that is up there on YouTube as well. So that should keep you very busy. Thank you guys once again for tuning in, watching me, joining me in my studio here. I look forward to seeing your artwork that you're going to send me over the next few days, and we'll see you same time, same place next week, when we're going to paint a whole new painting. And the link for that is in the description too, so you can click the reminder bell so you'll know when it's coming up, and it won't be too hard to find next week. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. I love all the comments in the comment section too. Have yourself a wonderful rest of your afternoon, and until we meet again.